A Tesla car located in Dubai is displaying its position as being hundreds of kilometers away, deep within the desert. 300-meter-long cargo ships anchored in the Arabian Gulf are reporting their locations as being in the Arabian desert. Meanwhile, flights appear to be hovering over Sharjah one second, only to be at the Omani border the very next. This is no mere software glitch. Rather, it is the story of an unseen weapon being deployed in the Middle East conflict, a weapon whose consequences could prove far more catastrophic than we can even imagine. Once again, welcome back to Shadow Atlas. Viewers, within the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East, the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran is no longer confined solely to missiles, drones, or conventional weaponry. Instead, an unseen weapon has now entered the battlefield, one that poses a threat not only to military forces but to the general civilian population as well. This phenomenon is known as GPS spoofing, or GPS jamming. Remarkably, the 1991 Gulf War marked the very first instance in which GPS technology was utilized. Today, that same GPS technology continues to serve as a strategic weapon in the ongoing conflict between Iran and Israel. During the 1991 Gulf War, the GPS network consisted of a mere 16 satellites, and at that time the technology was exclusively in the possession of the American military. During that conflict, Iraqi forces frequently found themselves lost and disoriented within the vast desert terrain. Conversely, the American forces aided by GPS were able to navigate a route through the heart of the desert that the Iraqi forces had never even conceived of. At that time, the Iraqi military faced immense operational difficulties amidst the fog, sandstorms, or the darkness of night, as they lacked the means to accurately determine their own location. The American forces, on the other hand, were able to maintain precise situational awareness of their location at all times, even during the night amidst dense fog or during violent sandstorms. The result was that missiles and bombs were delivered with pinpoint accuracy, making it easy to destroy the Iraqi military's communication towers and bunkers. The very GPS technology that served as a weapon of war 35 years ago has in 2026 re-emerged as a new weapon, though this time not as GPS itself, but rather as anti-GPS. This phenomenon was first observed during the conflict between Israel and the US against Iran, when people's Google Maps in Dubai began to behave erratically. It wasn't just Google Maps. The locations of Tesla vehicles, Uber and Careem drivers, and delivery riders began appearing, not in Dubai, but either somewhere in the Arabian Gulf or far away in the desert, miles removed from their actual positions. Initially, it was assumed that this might simply be a software glitch. However, upon subsequently checking Flight Radar 24, it became apparent that the reported locations of air traffic were also shifting erratically. For instance, an Emirates aircraft had just arrived in Dubai from Madrid when, for a brief period near the UAE border, a glitch was observed in its reported location. Similarly, a zigzag pattern was noted in the flight path of a plane traveling from Sharjah to Egypt. Regarding a flight from Sharjah to Mumbai, the aircraft's location was initially displayed at 3 distinct points within the Arabian Gulf. Subsequently, a zigzag flight pattern emerged, a trajectory that is physically impossible for any aircraft to execute. It was not just air traffic. The maritime network too fell victim to this disruption. The reported locations of ships anchored in the Arabian Gulf also began to appear erroneous. For example, one vessel appeared to be situated deep within the desert, right along the border between the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Another ship, having departed from Dubai Creek, was erroneously shown to be located in the Al Ramla region of the UAE. This phenomenon was not limited to the UAE. Along the Iranian coast, several ships were observed, on the map at least, moving in tight circular patterns over land. This is a maneuver that 300-meter-long vessels would find utterly impossible to execute, even if they attempted to do so, let alone over solid ground rather than water. Finally, after several days, the mystery was solved. The anomalies were in fact a consequence of ongoing Iranian drone and missile strikes in the region. Consequently, the local GPS system had been deliberately manipulated. However, to date, no military authority has issued an official statement regarding this matter. Iranian Shahed drones in particular rely heavily on GPS coordinates for navigation. If the GPS signals within that region are altered, it stands to reason that the drones will inevitably miss their intended targets. For several days now, similar anomalies have been observed not only in the UAE, Qatar and Saudi Arabia but across the entire Middle East. Yet a question lingers in everyone's mind. How exactly is GPS data being manipulated? In fact, many people are not even willing to accept that this is actually possible. There are two distinct terms involved here: GPS jamming and GPS spoofing. Seeing an incorrect GPS location on a mobile phone may seem like a rather trivial matter, but perhaps no one has yet fully grasped just how dangerous it can be. Before delving into the technicalities, let us understand, in simple terms, how GPS actually works. GPS, also known as the Global Positioning System, was developed in 1973 by the US Department of Defense as a military asset. The first GPS satellite was launched in 1978, and the entire system was fully completed in 1995. Initially, this system was designed exclusively for military use. However, following the downing of a Korean passenger airliner in 1983, the United States made it available for use by the entire world. GPS is a fascinating technology that operates based on a fundamental principle. To understand trilateration in simple terms, satellites orbit the Earth, transmitting only their precise time to the ground via radio signals. Our mobile devices perform a few simple calculations based on these incoming signals. These calculations reveal exactly how long it took for the signal emitted by the satellite to reach us, and since these signals travel at the speed of light, the mobile device can determine exactly how far away the satellite is in the sky. For instance, if a signal is generated at precisely 1 p.m. and reaches the ground exactly 70 milliseconds or 0.07 seconds later, it implies that the satellite is 21,000 kilometers away. However, its specific direction or position remains unknown. Based on these calculations, an imaginary circle is formed. This implies that your actual location could be anywhere along the circumference of this circle. However, this circle is so vast that it could encompass several entire countries. To ensure accurate results, the receiver embedded in the mobile device also picks up signals from a second satellite. This generates a second circle, which overlaps with the first one at two distinct points. This indicates that your actual location must be one of these two overlapping points. In other words, your exact location has not yet been pinpointed. Subsequently, the circle generated by the signal from a third satellite overlaps with both of the previous circles. The single specific point where the lines of all three circles intersect marks your precise location. Thus, the more satellite signals received, the more accurately one can determine a location. Currently, a total of 31 GPS satellites are orbiting the Earth. These satellites transmit signals at specific radio frequencies. For instance, signals intended for civilian use are transmitted at 1575 MHz, while those for military use are transmitted at 1227 MHz, and those for advanced applications at 1175 MHz. And since these signals originate from satellites located 20,000 kilometers away, they become quite weak by the time they reach Earth. Now, if we were to install a ground-based transmitter that broadcasts very powerful signals on these very same frequencies, the receiver, that is, the mobile device, would be unable to distinguish which signal is the actual GPS signal. Consequently, the entire area reached by the signals from this fake transmitter would experience a blackout, and all GPS devices within this zone would lose the ability to determine their location. This phenomenon is known as GPS jamming. From a military perspective, this presents both an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is that drones or GPS-guided missiles will fail to strike their intended targets. However, the disadvantage is that they will inevitably crash somewhere, whether in a desolate wilderness or into a residential building. This is precisely why the drones that Iran is targeting at American bases in the Middle East are, due to jamming, ending up crashing into and exploding against residential buildings instead. To resolve this issue and to make the process of countering GPS interference safer, certain modifications are introduced into the jamming procedure. Instead of simply broadcasting noise on the GPS radio frequencies, the ground-based transmitter now transmits a valid GPS signal, one that appears identical to the signal received from a satellite. However, there is a critical flaw embedded within this signal. The time data is deliberately falsified. Since this signal originates from a very close proximity and is significantly stronger than the satellite signal, the receiving device readily latches onto it. If the time data within the signal is off by even a single millisecond, the receiver will perceive its location as being several hundred kilometers away from its actual position. This technique is known as GPS spoofing, essentially an act of deception. From a military perspective, the advantage of this technology is that if a drone is approaching a city, it is first spoofed, deceived by sending a manipulated GPS signal, leading the drone to believe that its intended target lies to the left rather than to the right. Then, as it turns left towards an area that is actually a desolate wilderness or open sea, it can be safely intercepted. While GPS spoofing proves beneficial for military objectives, it has emerged as a grave threat to ordinary citizens. The disruption of services like Uber, Careem or various delivery apps is, in this context, merely a minor inconvenience. For airlines, however, GPS spoofing poses such a severe danger that pilots remain under the impression that their systems are functioning correctly, even while the aircraft has in reality strayed off course. This is because the aircraft's ground proximity warning system relies on GPS data. If spoofing causes the system to believe the aircraft is located elsewhere, even while a mountain looms directly below or ahead, the pilot will receive no warning. Similarly, spoofing could inadvertently steer an aircraft into a no-fly zone. During takeoff and landing, the aircraft might execute a sudden erratic turn, potentially leading to a catastrophic accident. Furthermore, GPS spoofing poses another often overlooked threat: the potential to devastate stock or cryptocurrency markets within a matter of minutes. Indeed, modern stock and crypto markets rely heavily on trading bots that must execute decisions within fractions of a second. Every transaction is assigned a timestamp, a precise record of exactly when a specific share was bought or sold. This exact timing data is derived directly from GPS signals, as GPS satellites are equipped with the world's most accurate atomic clocks. If spoofing causes the timestamp for even a single transaction to be recorded inaccurately, it could corrupt the entire subsequent chain of transaction records. In such a scenario, the market itself could suffer a catastrophic crash. Just as GPS emerged as a novel weapon during the Gulf War in 1991, GPS spoofing is similarly emerging as a new form of warfare in 2026. This technique has already been observed in conflicts ranging from the Russia-Ukraine war to the hostilities between Israel and Syria. However, the world experienced its first major shock regarding GPS spoofing in 2011, when Iran utilized this technique to not only hijack a highly classified US drone, the RQ-170, but also successfully guide it to a safe landing within its own territory. The incident unfolded in December 2011 when this covert US drone was conducting reconnaissance missions over Iranian airspace. At the time, the drone had taken off from a US airbase in Afghanistan and was naturally scheduled to return and land at that very same base. Through the use of spoofing technology, Iran manipulated the drone's GPS navigation system, effectively convincing the aircraft that it was descending toward its home base in Afghanistan, even though it was in reality located deep within Iranian territory. In other words, the drone was led to believe it was landing at a base in Afghanistan, whereas it actually landed within Iran. This incident served as a global eye-opener, demonstrating how spoofing can be weaponized in warfare. GPS spoofing has proven that future wars will no longer be fought solely with gunpowder, but rather with invisible radio waves and data manipulation. And in such conflicts, victory will belong to those who harness technology without becoming enslaved by it. We hope you will enthusiastically like and share this video from Shadow Atlas. Thank you so much for your encouraging comments. We look forward to seeing you in our next exciting video.